Hello, everyone. My name is Catherine Martinez. I am marketing executive for Australasia. Thank you for everyone staying in this webinar. So now I'm going to introduce my colleague from India, that she's a regional marketing manager from India, Disha.
Hi, everyone.
And Rosita, that she's a regional marketing manager for East Asia.
Hello.
And Amy, she's in charge of marketing for nuts. Now, thank you for everyone who is listening this webinar. Now we're going to start the webinar, Your Guide to Writing a Successful Case Study. Next slide, please. First, I'm going to speak about a few housekeeping notes. The orange arrow open and close your control panel. You can change the audio option to computer or phone. All the attendees' microphones are mute. This is a practical workshop, so please feel free to send all your questions, comments, and share your experience during the session, and we will be answering you. Participants will receive a post-webinar email, so don't worry, and along with an attendance certificate and recording link to our post session. Next slide, please. Now I'm going to speak about the agenda. First, the introduction to Emerald Case Collection. After my colleague Amy, she's going to speak about current competitions and case writing presentation by Dr. Farzana Quoquab, Associate Editor of Emerging Market Case Studies Journals, EMCS, and Associate Professor at University Technology Malaysia. And in the end, we will have time to do the questions and answers. So next slide, please. Well, so now we're going to speak about Emerald Publishing Case Study. We publish high-quality teaching cases study covering real-world challenges to support our future leaders. We also have over 2,900 case studies published and essential program for libraries to empower future change makers and for faculty to engage with the students with relevant information and relevant material. Also, we cover broad of subjects across recent trends in business, management, such as gender, diversity, inclusion, environment, sustainability, essential for any institution with a business study course. In the next slide, my colleague Amy is going to continue.
Okay. Good afternoon or good morning to all the attendees. I'm Amy. Nice to see you all. And today's it's my turn. Now it's my turn to introduce you guys about our case study collection called Emerging Markets Case Study Collection, so called EMCS. So the special of the EMCS actually is focused on the emerging markets or the developing economies within certain regions that are oftenly underrepresented in the traditional case study. So the EMCS will provide a very unique case study for the educators to explore and to use in the classroom and to have a dynamic discussion with the students, and the students have the chances to learn and to test their decision-making skills in the classroom before they enter the workforces. So in this case studies, actually, we accept the full spectrum of the business management, which include accountings or marketings or tourism and hospitality, and even strategies plans. These are all the subjects that we accepted. And the case can be based on the primary or the secondary data. And please note that our case should be written about the real people in a real organization, a company, and those people who are real making a real decisions. So shouldn't be any fictional. And please be note that if you wanted to submit the case, um, the length of the cases should be within 7,000 words. So it can be either in compact formats or in a traditional length up to 7,000 or between 1,000 to 3,000 words. And the cases should be original, which means cannot be published somewhere else before. So, what are the benefits if you submit your case study to our EMCS? Actually, we offer the payments on the publication. So once your submission got accepted, we will provide some payments, and also our EMCX are actually Scopus indexed, which means it's under the cases will be viewed process within a very strict double-blind peer review, and the acceptance rate actually is quite competitive. And our first decision will normally be made within 19 days, 90 days. So if you are interested in more details about the EMCS or you wanted to submit, you can visit the guidelines, other guidelines on our website, and we will also provide the links in our follow-up emails with you guys. And next one, in to promote how to write high quality case studies and then to represent the case study in a certain regions, we actually have two undergoing case writing competitions, and one is for Africa and Middle East case writing competition. So this one is to encourage the authors. They can write about the real situation or real challenges within the countries or the region in Africa or Middle East, Turkey, and Pakistan. And we want to also provide the development of the high quality case writing skills for this region. So there are some requirements for the submission. First, you have to adherence to the EMCS author guidelines, and then you have developing emergency markets focus for your case studies within the region that I just mentioned. And also, the author should be based at higher education institution within these countries. And the case should be in a real situation in a real company. And the cases that you wanted to submit can be either in compact format or the full length. It's all, we all accept that. And we also have the prize funds, £2,000 and including 1,000 for the winner. And this one for the Middle East and Africa competition is going to be, the competition is going to be ended at the end of this month. So please be noted about the deadline. And the judging process can be take up 2 months time period for this competition. So for anyone who are not from these region but also wanted to submit your cases, we have another competition. Actually, it's in partnership with the TLC MDI Dragon. ENCS really wanted to encourage the authors for writing cases from the perspective of India. Also, we wanted to encourage and then promote the skills of writing a high quality case studies in India. So we also have this kind of competition. And this one, the competition will be ended at the end of the November, so we still have time. And there are some requirements for submissions you need to comply with. The first one also, you have to adherence with the EMCS other guidelines, and also have a developing and emerging markets focus from India. And please, if you are the author, you have to be in the higher educational institution in India, and also be based on a real situation in a real company. And cases can be either be compact or full length. So please note that the judge process can take up to the 2 month period. So the announcement will maybe in next year. So feel free to submit your case study to the competition based on where you located. Okay, so after talking about the competition, I am going to share about the resources that we have for you to write a successful cases. And the first one is how to write a teaching cases guide. So this one is also on our website, and you can have a look and then to see what kind of guide that we provide. And also we have the Emerald Cases Hub. This one is also for people can have a discussion or have a look to see how people and authors sharing their thoughts on this. And then the next one will be the compact guide to compact cases. So you can also have a look. If you wanted to find, our nearly 3,000 case studies on our website, you can check our Emerald Insights, our database. And if you have any more questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us by the email here, asia.emerald.com, and we are more than happy to help you with any of your questions. And last but not least, I'm going to introduce you guys our keynote speaker today. Okay, so as you can see here, Dr. Farzana is an associate professor at Asman Hashim International Business School at UTMKL, and she is a prolific case writer and has published the cases in internationally reputed journals such as Asian Case Research Journal, Asian Journal Management Cases, and Emerald Emerging Market Case Studies. And she has added 2 case books which are published by the Emerald Publishing. And she secured many research grants, including the case writing grant schemes. And as a contribution to the research and their publications, she has received several awards, such as the Emerald Literati Awards for Outstanding Reviewers in 2021 and 2022, Excellent Service Awards, and then Faculty Awards for Research, Highly Commended Awards, Special Awards for Case Writing, and so on. And currently, she is serving as an associate editor of Emerald Emerging Market Case Studies, and she also served as an ad hoc reviewer for ACRJ, AJMC, and EMCS. From 2025 to 2026, she was appointed as the team director of IBS UTM Case Clearance House Initiative. She has been serving as the editorial and review board member in several reputed journals. So let's welcome our Dr. Farzana for the presentation. And Dr. Farzana, the floor is yours now.
Okay, thank you very much, Amy. Let me share my slides.
Okay.
Okay, I need the feedback whether you can see the full screen or not.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. So thank you very much to the Emerald team for having me here and inviting me to share my experiences being the editor, being the reviewer, being the writer. Well, So as already Amy introduced me, that I'm actually serving as associate editor of Emerald Emerging Markets Case Studies since 2018. I'm also associate editor of Journal of Global Responsibility. Both are published by Emerald. I published several cases and I also published 2 books. So I will not say that I know everything about case, but I can say that I'm an advanced learner, and here today I'm going to share with you some tips and tricks about how to write case study. So our discussion today will have 3 parts. One, I will go about discussing the main case narrative, and then I'll talk about teaching notes and a little bit about dealing with the review feedback, because this is part and parcel of writing a case, and after submission, how it goes on. So before I start, the first thing, a little bit I want to say, what is a teaching case? So when you're talking about teaching case, so if you read different books, different articles, you'll find definitely different, definitions. But the common definition or common gist of it, like this is something that we use as a pedagogical tool to facilitate the classroom learning. And this case actually, the way it is written, it is enhance the adult learning practices in the classroom setting. And most of the time it deals with a problem or a scenario that the readers or the audiences, they have to find out a solution, but there is no particular one answer to solve the case. Okay, so when you're talking about teaching case, so there are something also I need to highlight a little bit, that we have 2 types of case, and fortunately or unfortunately, we sometimes synonymously use the term case or teaching case. So there are some differences of writing these cases. So in terms of naming it or the terminology wise, some people say that teaching case. So teaching case meaning purely when it is actually written for as a pedagogical tool for enhancing the classroom learning. And some people, they say that actually, the other types of cases, a research case or case article, whatever it is. So there's a differentiating point. So if I refer to these particular authors, they say that it actually varies based on purpose and the starting point and also the final output. So let's look at this one a little bit. So the differentiating point, there can be many more, but the main difference is case research and the teaching case. So case research, either it is single case oriented or multiple cases oriented. And when you're talking about teaching case, so it is actually can be descriptive or it is about decision making. So purpose-wise, the purpose of the case research is basically academic, and the purpose-wise, in terms of the teaching case, the purpose is basically enhancing the classroom learning by showing the participant audience the real scenario of one particular company or particular person. So how they see the, a particular topic or theme that is discussed in the textbook. Data collection for case research, it is actually one of the tradition of data qualitative method. If you're familiar with Creswell, then Creswell said that case method is one of the qualitative traditions to collect the data. And this is basically data collection qualitative, solely qualitative. When you're talking about case study or teaching case, data collection can be anything. It doesn't mean that we have to confine within the qualitative paradigm. It can be also merged with quantitative or whatever it is that helps you to get the information. Well, of course, qualitative is one big part of it. Audience, when you're talking about case research, basically audiences are academicians. And when you're talking about teaching case, it can be academician, it can be practitioners, it can be industry-oriented people. So it is actually wider. In terms of presentation, also how we present it varies. In terms of case research, presentation falls back to the proper paper writing style, research paper writing style, like 5 sections. Content might be different, but 5 section intro, LR, then methodology, analysis, findings, and those so on and so forth. But teaching case, we do not have exactly particular form or presentation, but it follows basically a storytelling approach. Having said that, this storytelling is not beyond of some rules and regulations. I will talk about it a little bit more later on. So presentation was also different. So basically case research, it follows academic writing style. So there are a lot of things when it comes to academic writing style, like citation, one of the major part of it, justifying everything you are doing. Presentation also follows some system. We present it like a storytelling style with some relevant information. So this is one example of how it looks like a case research. Is basically, following the academic writing style. Like you can see a lot of citation, starting with the academic way of writing style, approach is very formal. And this is case study, teaching case. So it is actually following some sort of triggering some, enthusiasm or queries in the reader's mind, and it follows some sort of a storytelling approach. In terms of a structure, also quite flexible. So when you're talking about case writing, there, like all other research, we have different school of thoughts. Maybe not to a greater extent, but a little bit of differences is everywhere. So I'm going to share with you my experience and knowledge based on EMCS, and also I'm also part of the NACRA, North American Association of Research. So they also talk about case writing quite vastly. So I'm sharing with you my feedback, my opinion today based on these two. So when I start talking about different school of thought, actually it is not that we are very different in different schools. But for example, how many pages of length it should be, what kind of information, or for example, we have two kind of information. We say good to know and must know. So some maybe journals, they will like you to give them lot of information, good to know, must know both. But maybe for EMCS or some other journals, they will be very particular about knowing the must know, what is related to solving the case problem, not the beyond of that. So there are some little bit here and there. Okay, so when you're talking about writing a teaching case, so there are certain rules we need to follow. So though it follows a storytelling approach, but still we have some rules to follow. So when we understand those rules to follow, what I should follow, and you understand it in advance, then it's very easy when you collect information and then write it down, then you already know how to share or present those information, or what kind of information you need, or what can help your classroom teaching. So those are the things. So first thing is decision focus. So when you're talking about decision focus, so this decision has to be something, important or crucial. Yes, there are cases they do not have any decision to make. We call them actually descriptive case study. So descriptive case study that actually need not to have any kind of decisions to make. But however, having said that, if you want to increase your chance to get into publication stage in a reputed case journal, not necessarily with only EMCS, but also we have the case journals published by SAGE, case journal published by World Scientific, by NACRA, and also some other places, reputed places. So basically, reviewers, editors, the main focus goes to the decision focus cases. So if you want to have a greater chance for accepting your cases, then better you follow decision focus case, okay, not a descriptive case. Descriptive case will be like good for book writing. Maybe you're writing a book as a chapter of your case book, or publishing in or any submitting any conference papers, that's completely okay given the fact that the review committee allow that. But when you're talking about reputed journals, so then the chances actually quite slim when you're trying to submit a case that is not decision focused. Chances are very slim. It is your luck. It is luck meaning if the reviewer is kind-hearted, if the associate editors is finding something they're appealing, it might go on. But actually, there's very slim chance. If it comes to me, I'll directly reject. I recommend for rejection if there is no decisions to make, if there is no problem to be solved. Okay. So this decision has to be also something important. I will talk about it a little bit later as some sort of, I'll show you one example about one case and then I will give you more feedback on that. So when you're talking about protagonist is the person who actually or by whom we actually sing the whole case scenario, and this is the person who have to make a choice or make a decision at the end. So this protocol, we can have several characters. So case might have several characters. Protocol is basically one or two person. They are key persons who are making the decisions and who are thinking they have to do something. And we see the case scenario, the case story via the protagonist lens. So what happened is that sometimes some cases the writers they forget to give sufficient information about protagonists. Let's say I'm reading one case. Let's say for example the writers writing about Atul. So Atul is the manager of XYZ or CEO of XYZ company, and then Atul is thinking that he have to make a choice. Now we also need to know that's not all. We also need to know about Atul. What is his age? What was his background of the education? Did Atul have any prior experience of working in the same field, same industry before? How many years of experience? So actually, how much information you need about protagonist is also depends on the case problem and the topic you are actually focusing. Let's say your topic is focusing OB, organizational behavior, or leadership. Or HRM, then we actually need quite detailed information of the protagonist, not only about his biographic details, but also his leadership style, his past experiences, his dealing with other colleagues, because you have to understand that since you're focusing on the topic that has to deal with human side, so when we are reading the case, so then as audience, I also want to understand that authors how he as leader, how he as a human resource manager, or how he as colleague. So all those things helps the readers to understand the scenario better and take a decisions better. Well, now, if it is like a consumer behavior study, or you don't have much to do with leadership or how you're dealing with your team, still we need some basic biographic detail to understand the scenario better. So in both cases, we need information, but how much we need information that will vary based on the topic and the problem you are solving. So this is something that many authors they also miss. They sometimes do not give proper information about the protagonist, then give the name, and sometimes that name pop up here and there, but it is not about proper different discussion or characteristics about the protagonist. Opening hook, some people call it opening gambit, opening paragraph, introductory sections, no matter what. So this is actually where the case is opening. So it started to unfold. So this is something usually, it is short and crunchy. So some journals, they prefer one big paragraph as the opening hook. And some journals, they don't mind if you write 2-3 paragraphs is fine. So it depends on why you are submitting. However, having said that, nevertheless, so this opening hook should have some questions and answers. You don't need to write the questions, but there should be some answers of some question. First question is who Who is, that means who is that protagonist? Okay. Second question is what? What is the problem? What main problem? Of course, you can explain the problem detail later on, but the main agenda should be highlighted in the opening hook. We also need to know where. So where this problem? Is it actually in India, in South Africa, in Malaysia, where? So if you have lot of states or different states greatly varies their culture, then we also need to know the state name. So because usually it happens that though within the same country, but different state might have a little bit differences in terms of food habit, cultural practices, interaction with people, clothes, so on and so forth. So first we need to know what is the problem, then who is the protagonist and where the case problem is actually situated, and we also want to know about when. So when meaning there are a few things. Basically, the case start with the time, that is the time I call it case problem is positioned. Maybe different writers might have different opinion about that, but I call it when the case problem is positioned. That means when Atul started to think that Atul have to do something. So let's say Atul is facing a problem about sales decline or customers, any kind of problems dealing with the customer. So that is actually when Atul is thinking he have to do something. Is it 2024 January? So the problem can be started 1 year ago or 6 months ago or any time, but Atul started to think that problem he has to do something maybe early to 2024. So these are the certain things should be in the opening hook. So as I said that it follows a storytelling approach, but it has some rules and regulations that we need to follow when we are telling that story to the audience. Date, yes, it is also part and parcel of our case writing. I see it in this way that I speak that, and not only me, the school of thought I belong to, that we speak that the writer should give 3 dates. First date, when the case problem is positioned, that means when Atul started to think that he have to do something. This is the last or latest time actually date. After that, we have to freeze all information. We cannot give after that any information. What I mean by that? If it is a real company, it has to be real company, but let's say the problem already solved, but still we want to make a case out of the past problem that the company faced, because there are a lot of things to learn from that experience. So we want to highlight and share that dilemma with the greater audience, so people will learn from that particular situation. So let's take one example from Malaysia, that we have a KPG, we have several branches here. So let's say one branch, that particular branch experience any problem or any issues or dilemma, and then the problem was maybe in 2023 during post-pandemic transition time, and then the problem is solved. So if you want to position the case problem in 2023, maybe January, then you have to freeze all the information after January 2023. You cannot give the information after that, how they solve the problem, what happened after the situation, cannot, because we are creating a situation and the scenario for the audience that they will know only the dilemma, only the situation, so they will think how they can solve this problem. Okay, but you can actually have a place that we call epilogue at the end of the teaching guide, where you can write what exactly happened after that, how the company and the protagonist they solve the problem. You can have that part in the teaching note, not in the case narrative, at the end under the section we call epilogue. Okay, so first date, as editor, as a reviewer, I want from my writers to have. First thing is that when the opening hook, the thing when the case problem is positioned. Secondly, I want to know, I think all case reviewers, they want to know when the problem was started. The company can maybe started in 1990 maybe, but maybe it was going well. But maybe the problem started during pandemic, maybe 2020, maybe mid 2020. So the case problem started to happen mid 2020. I also want to know another date that it is actually sometimes, or most of the time, many authors, they actually forget it to tell us by when the problem has to be solved. So if Atul is facing a problem January 2024, then Atul need to tell in the writing that by when this problem has to be solved. Why it is needed? It actually creates urgency. It gives the urgency to the dilemma, meaning to say how important it is. If let's say I'm saying that, okay, I can, overcome this problem anytime in the future, there is no urgency. It doesn't make sense. It is not sharing the how important the problem is. So this is some sort of related to creating the urgency that by when the problem has to be solved. Is it by the next week, any another board meeting, the solution has to be submitted, or is it by next 6 months or within a year? So there should be cut-off date. So that is about date. Use of tense, yes, it has to be written in past tense. Even the case is actually based on 3 months before one incident, still it is done. So it has to be written in past tense. Information and data. So this information actually will be related to the case scenario. The information we need about the protagonist, about the case problem. We also need a little bit about the industry background to understand the industry dynamic. And some cases, this is very important. For example, if you're writing a case about marketing topic, then it is very important to see the other competitors, how they're doing, and what are the choices the consumers have. So those kind of things we all the time need industrial scenario. And then information, basically we start from the recent problem, then the case unfold. So unfold and give more information about the past, what happened. So first we start with the recent date, that is, let's say January 2024, when Atul is thinking have to do something. Then it unfold at the, what happened a few months before or maybe 1 year before. So what the problem, how it started and how it became so serious. So what are the things are interrelated. So those are the information and facts and figures we need to, of course, provide within the writing of the case. How much information you need to give, it depends, and of course you have to see the length of the requirements of the case. Let's say if Emerald says, EMCS says that 7,000, you should not exceed 7,000. So you also need to see how you can make a balance about what information you want to share and within the 7,000 words. Let's say you are submitting to different journal, and that journal actually is quite flexible in terms of word count. Then you have the more privilege or choices, to give plenty of information. So it depends. So when you have a limited word count as the requirement for submission, then you have to see what are the information actually very important for the readers or the audience to understand and to get to solve the case problem. Structure, this is quite flexible for case teaching and teaching cases. We cannot say that it has 5 sections like research paper. No, not at all. It can have 5 sections, 7 sections, 8 sections, 4 sections. It all depends on the writers, writing approach, writing style. As long all informations are there, but of course we use some signposting using in terms of section heading. So you should have a section about the case problem they're facing, the industry scenario, then and something related. If it is OB or management case, it will be different. If it is, for example, marketing case, maybe it will be different. If it's entrepreneurship case, it will be different. So structure wise is quite flexible. But if I get a case, and sometimes I get a case that the writers use the subsections like research paper, then I have to return it to the author, either desk reject or return it to the author saying that kindly follow the proper writing style, case writing style. What I do not like at all, you should not have a section heading like literature review, methodologies, and then your reviewer will understand that you never have experience of writing a teaching case. Well, having said that, you can convert your case research into a actually teaching case, but convert meaning you can take the information, but writing approach and style presentation will be different. Communication style and language. When you're communicating to the international audience, yes, you have to be very particular and careful about the language. Basically, we write in English, so then you have to send it for proofreading even. So sometimes when I see a lot of mistakes, grammatical error, not written using past tense, so it gives headache. It's some sort of telling me that, or not telling me, or reviewers that the writers is not serious, didn't take it seriously. So please send, if English is not our mother tongue, so it is very normal that we don't understand every single thing when you're writing, so then send it for a proofreader. So that can be clean up the writing, so it will help the reader to read it smoothly. Strategic alternatives. So strategic alternatives actually optional. Some cases, yes, they provided that author will have 3 options. So option A, option B, option C. So which options Ratul should follow? So this is something, as I said, optional, but it's good to give if you have it or if you can make it. Why so? This kind of options create more actual interesting scenario and make it more complicated to make a decisions, because when you say option ABC, it is not enough to say option ABC. We also need to tell the reader that option A associated with these pros and cons, option B related to these pros and cons, option C also these pros and cons. So this is some sort of creating more dilemma and more interesting for the reader. So then the reader will think, okay, which one to go? And different audience, different students, they might have different answers. Some will say option A, some will say option B. So as I said, never mind, if you cannot give it, it is not compulsory, it is just optional. Case closing. So case closing actually mainly reiterating the main case problem. So some cases they might have two small problem, it's fine, but the thing is here, the key is here, do not try to overpromise. You can just focus on only one big problem and it's completely all right. I saw cases the author trying to highlight, let's say for example, one management dilemma, one entrepreneurship dilemma, one again environmental dilemma. It doesn't make your case more appealing. Actually, what make your case appealing? You have a good problem to solve. So why I'm saying that sometimes when you overpromise, we actually forget the main key. And when you are messing up with different problem, then nothing is getting maybe priority. Okay, you can, if you can do it properly, it's fine, go ahead. But most of the time we try to tend to overpromise. We think that will make my case more appealing, but it's not. It depends on the main problem and how much it is appealing, how much it is latest, interesting, and really something lot of complicated volatile situation related. Okay, so when you're talking about case, it can be descriptive, like as I said you that it is about just boring, monotonous, explaining something happened, so, and most of the time what happened when you're writing descriptive cases, most of the time authors they bring success stories. Yeah, that's good, success stories, but when you're telling only success stories, very little to know, little to learn. But if you say a lot of problem that company face, then it achieves success. And when it has lot of problem, how to overcome, then it makes sense. But if you're just making it like, let's say you're very fond of for example, one company, and then you are just trying to, let's say you're talking about KPG and you want to talk good about it, Actually, you do not need to do that. People, if they want to know about success story, they do not need to read your case per se. Why we need case? Why we use case? We want the students or the participant to see that what we teach in the classroom, the theories, the topic, those actually not exactly the same way work in the real life. So when there's a deficiencies, when there is some problem arise, so how that particular leader, particular CEO or particular manager, they handle the problem. So that is the main issue, that we use the case to give the real life example to the reader, to tell them that, okay, when sometimes this kind of theory and academic tools and topics doesn't work in the same way, then what the managers they do, how they make a balance in between. So what I mean here, so descriptive case, if you're trying to write, even don't make it a success story. It is not your duty to promote that company, that the advertisement agency will do that for them. You just be honest and you tell that something that have takeaway. So that takeaway is the main key of using the case. So as I said at the earlier, for me as like reviewer, editor, I really do not appreciate much descriptive cases. I prefer decision focused cases. Now, there is another kind of case, problem solving cases. To me, I prefer higher level problem solving. So, decision focused plus problem solving. So, let's say I'm saying that decisions can be without problem, like, or without major problem. I can say that, okay, I have 3 branches and they are doing very well, 3 shops, and now I want to open another shop. So this is actually decision focus, that okay, whether I will open another shop or not. But is that it is making clear, is there any problem? No. But if I say that, okay, there's some dilemma related to opening one more branch, for example, or one more outlet, and what are the problem? Maybe inflation rate, maybe my customers are actually not so much aware about the product or service I'm offering them, or maybe lot of other competitors, so then it is creating a problem. Okay, so now what choice is yours, of course choice is yours, and I cannot say 100% that no, 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 I cannot say that, but I'm just saying if you want to have more increased chance for your acceptance of your case, go for decision focus plus problem solving cases. Okay, so as I said, sales declining, so need to rebrand. Does it make sense? Sales declining, so need to expand. Does it make sense? Have 2 shops, want to create new, want to expand. So what? Everybody want expansion. But if you say that there's some dilemma like inflation, surviving from the pandemic, but still want to expand, that makes sense. So what I'm trying to say you here is that those examples are taken from real cases that submitted to MCA, sometimes I read. So I have to straightforward suggest recommend for this rejection when this kind of problem comes, because there's no problem. Well, this one I actually I know that we have a shortage of time, but I want to read this one because I want to show you the review feedback based on this particular writing. So it is about Tesla. So one author written like this, they trying to write a descriptive case, but he or she didn't say it is a descriptive case, but it actually sounds like a descriptive case. So in March 2016, Tesla unveiled to its expected, I mean, this kind of thing, all actually narrative, just narration of the Tesla, what it has done. Now, I'm showing you the review feedback from 2 reviewers. So first reviewer said, to me, this is a well-written essay rather than case. No clear protagonist, no dilemma, no future opportunity, okay? Moreover, this case is developed based on the secondary data. And at the end, the reviewer said, I think this essay needs a lot of improvement to convert to a case study. So this reviewer actually was very straightforward, saying 4th point, and according to this reviewer, this is not a case, this is an essay. So what happens when you submit descriptive case? Another reviewer too, they don't know anyone because we follow a blind peer review system. So reviewers, they do not know you at all. Okay, only editors, they can see the name, not the reviewers. So, but their review feedback almost similar. So this reviewer too also said, unfortunately, I think this is a document is not fit for the MCS, and said it is a descriptive essay, right? It also said that it doesn't present a dilemma or decision point. Then actually this reviewer was more thorough and more giving feedback why the reviewer think in this way, that he was talking that this final paragraph causes some confusion, saying that is it the protagonist point of view the case has to be highlighted or the company's point of view. And then he's also talking about more, saying that this may require digging into customer decision, more lot of information and suggestions to the writers how they can develop the further this essay or the descriptive case into a teaching case. But as you saw, none of them saw each other, none of them know each other, none of them, the reviewers I'm referring to, but their feedback is almost same. Okay, so well, right. So just one second. What I want to talk. So this is in terms of structure. I want to show that one case I have written before. Actually, recently I'm not writing case. I'm more focused on research papers. So this is some sort of very flexible, fluid kind of section headings, and these are basically like a storytelling kind of thing. You'll not see a literature review methodology, nothing. And another case, it also have different kind of sections based on the requirement of the case topic and the dilemma. So the issue here is that when you have case closing, so most of the time I see that some authors, when I have this kind of talk, I given them some sort of my examples of my past cases, and some of my case if finished or end with moving forward, moving away, ahead, way forward, way to go. And then after my talk or webinar, sometimes and most of the time I see the authors, they're submitting cases with the same closing section heading. Please don't do that. You have to be innovative. You have to be, there cannot be like 20 cases ending with the same section heading. It's funny. So try to be more creative. I'm pretty sure there will be some more and different section heading you can come up with that actually showing the ending without having these 3-4 exactly same section heading. Okay. Well, when you're talking about teaching note, it also have different names, like some say teaching guide, teaching manual. So no matter what, this is something part and parcel of our case writing. So when you write the teaching case narrative, sometimes what happens, and I think many authors, they write the teaching note at the end, and this is a wrong approach. Why it is wrong approach? This is the guide for us to write the actually my case narrative. So you don't need to have the whole teaching notes prepared earlier. You need to have few part of it. For example, what learning objective, what target audience, what theory and concept you are going to highlight. So these 3-4 things should have in your hand actually beforehand. So once you have those 3 things in your mind clearly, then we go for data collection, and then we go for writing the case. So synopsis, it will be like, the overall picture of your case, but highlighting the case problem, those questions like, who is the protagonist, what is the company all about, what is the case problem all about, when the problem is started, and when the problem has to be solved, and where is the case situated. Everything has to be in the synopsis actually, and also the dilemma the protagonist facing. Learning objective, we advise these writers to follow Bloom's taxonomy. I think this is common for most of the case journals. So Bloom's taxonomy also have a hierarchy, like, start from the simple to highest level. So follow that kind of strategy as well. Target audience, don't be too optimistic. If your case problem is very simple, very clear cut, don't say that your case target audience are actually postdoctoral level. Stick to undergraduate level. it is not making your case better. As I said, that the main issue is how much your case problem is appealing and whether everything in line. So if your case problem is very simple and you are targeting the audience like postgrad level or executive level, that's actually is not in line. It doesn't make sense. So don't be too optimistic. Be realistic. Relevant theory concepts. So it is not compulsory to have theory all the time. It can be any concept. Let's say you're focusing on marketing, then you can just say that, okay, it is focusing on marketing mix strategies, or maybe just product strategies, or maybe product grid metrics. So whatever it is. So be specific here. Again, I have to say that when you're talking about this theory and concepts, some authors, they're too optimist, and then they try to highlight many things, entrepreneurship, then maybe management and maybe marketing. Don't do that. Be focused to particular thing that makes sense for all the write-up, all information provided. So if you want to target few things, then you are actually losing your main essence and you are not doing anything properly. Data collection method, you should have a section heading and where you will explain how you collected the data. Is it purely interview based, or it is also have some literature review, published materials, or it is purely based on secondary data? For your information, writing a good case based on pure secondary data, not so easy. It is very challenging. Of course, you can write given the fact that there are plenty of information available in the public sources. Let's say you want to write a case about mass, maybe you can write. But if you're talking about something, a airline that doesn't have much information in the online properly, then you will be suffering. Another problem writing from secondary data is that your reviewer may want more information. Your reviewer may want you to add on some other thing. So if those information are not available in the public, in data source, then you will have trouble to address review feedback as well. So I'm not saying it cannot be done. Of course, there are cases written based on secondary data, but what I'm trying to say, it is a bit challenging. Teaching plan, this is basically for EMCS, we have a 90 minutes teaching plan. It's not 60 minutes, it's 90 minutes. And you need to highlight these 60 minutes, how you allocate to demonstrate, the administer this case and to have the debate, discussion, and all those things. Assignment questions, these questions has to be in line with your learning objective and the concept or the subject you are highlighting. You have, let's say, highlighting entrepreneurship, but your assignment questions are highlighting basically maybe SWOT analysis, or maybe the answer product grid. It doesn't make sense. So it all has to be, in line, learning objective, concept or the topics to cover, and the assignment questions. Suggested answers, also you need to give some suggested answer, but remember that the suggested answer should be based on the information you given in the case narrative. You're supposed not to include outside information. And that also has to be, it is good if it is guided by some sort of, the teaching concept and things you are highlighted. Now, when you're writing organizing the assignment questions, one key thing I have to highlight, and that is actually lackings in our case writers, most of the time I see, the main case problem, put it at the last questions, creating the dilemma. So you have your case problem right at the beginning, opening hook in the case narrative. So that is the thing, preferable you put it in the last assignment questions, that if you are Atul, how you see, how you're going to boost the sales or how you're going to solve this problem. So this is some sort of key thing. Of course, I can go on and on for each more, but well, I think I almost reached the end of the time, but I have to cover a little bit more. Dealing with review feedback. So the next is after you submit, then the next is you get review feedback. There can be different kind of decisions actually. One can be desk rejections. We also desk reject, but not actually too many, but we also do desk reject. Then we like to give the chances actually, but that doesn't mean you got the chance and it will be, accepted. There is no 100% guarantee because it depends how much you're serious in addressing those review feedback. So you have to prepare this kind of table, the left side, you list down all the feedback you get from reviewer 1, reviewer 2. If associate editor give, then also that one. And right side, your response. And one thing I have to highlight again, and I do it for my all talk, that do not just write done or it is done. We have to be more clear what you have done, where you have done, how you have done. So the more you will be clear here, there's a more possibility that the reviewer will be accepting and taking your case or you seriously, that no, they are following me, they're trying their best. So sometimes many authors, they're very lazy. They do not put effort to make this table properly, and then we suffer. Even I have experienced that my reviewer came back to me saying that I don't think this table is appropriate. Can you ask the author to give us a better table explaining what they have done? So what I'm trying to say, don't be lazy for preparing this table. That is, you are going to make trouble for yourself. So try to address as much as you can and explain which page, which para, what you have done, explain properly. It shows that you took it seriously as well. You will get a lot of information at the beginning. Amy explained to all of you that you can go to our website and you'll get all information there and how to write, even the guidance there. So you can see there also it is written that, decision making dilemma. So decision focused, and also there should be some dilemma, okay? And write using the past tense. So those are the things you can get it easily from our website. And that's all from me today. I do hope that what I'm sharing will help you to understand the basic, but actually case writing is something, it's not so much, a structured thing. So unless you write, unless you get review feedback, you address review feedback, you will not get the whole picture. So when you write and go through the process, then you will learn better actually, okay? And take it very positively, be open-minded when you get the review feedback. It's very important. Don't be stubborn, don't be too much defending. I have experience like this, that the two reviewer, they given feedback, three reviewers given feedback to the author. I'm telling you real life experience. Then the author got the feedback, and author was not willing to follow the review feedback. And then what happened the next round, all reviewers, they rejected the paper. And when all reviewers or one or two reviewers reject the manuscript, we cannot actually proceed with that. Okay, so therefore take it very open-minded, positively, nothing to be stubborn. It is not the end of the world. Nobody's telling that you do not know how to write. It's just that there are some loopholes and there are some lackings you need to modify, and the guidance is there, just follow. So if you are very positive and patient, maybe 2-3 rounds, then maybe it can be accepted. But if you are quite rigid, stubborn, taking it very personally, not willing to do any changes, then it can get rejected even second revision round. So that's all from me, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Farzana. Now we're going to start with the questions and answer. We have few questions here, so let's start with that. Our first question is, do we always need a consent from the company for making publishing cases related to their company? Hello?
I couldn't get it. Would you mind to repeat it again?
Yeah. Do we always need a consent, a permission from the company for publishing the case related to their own company, or like, do we need a permission from them?
Yeah. Yes, literally, yes. Actually, if there are two things. If you are writing a case based on fully published data that you didn't have anything to do with interviews, then maybe you do not need to obtain any permission, consent letter. But if any interviews the case is based on interviews, then you have to get the consent letter from the company. It doesn't mean that you have to get the consent letter from the owner. It can be anyone holding authority to sign that consent letter. Yes, if it is primary data oriented, you need to, but if it is pure secondary data, then maybe you don't need to. But if you're writing a controversial case, sometimes we get controversial case. It is my personal opinion, and some of the school of thought, they also maybe follow the same thing. They think that if it is controversial case, let's say ethical issues, cheating case or something, then the company can actually sue you, you know. So if it is neutral case, you're just talking about OB, HR, marketing dilemma, and it is based on pure published data, is fine. You don't need to. But it is, if it is controversial case, then you have to think a little bit of whether there's any hazard of not discussing with the company itself or not. But if it is, let's say, pure primary data, you have to get consent letter. If it is combination, primary and secondary, you have to get consent letter. Yeah, I hope I answered the question.
Yeah, and regarding the answer for that question, which one, will have more opportunity for publishing? Which, the first
Which
one,
one?
like,
Interview
or
or the secondary data?
yes, exactly. Yeah.
Right. That is not the major point, actually. That is not the main agenda. The issue is whether your case problem is appealing. So now what happened, I tell you differently. What happened is that, when you go for interviews, sometimes what happened, it is more easy for us to write the case, or it is more easy for us to address review feedback. Sometimes it happens even that, even when I'm writing case, it can happen also that, let's say I written the case and I submitted, I got the review feedback, and then based on the review feedback, I went another round of interviews, because the things my reviewer wanted me to address, I need to again talk to the person in charge. So I cannot say which one has more acceptance rate, but it depends on how you are going to handle the revision process, and whether you can make an appealing case based on the data you have. So it is not about primary data or secondary data. It is about how you're going to address the review feedback and how appealing your case problem. So let's say you have a lot of information on the website about one company, but if those information basically talking about success story, then it is not helping you to write a case. Your case turn up with the success story case. You don't need to, as I say, you don't need to advertise any case, any company. Your job is to tell a story that has something to take away, that something will help the reader to understand a particular concept, academic terminologies, academic theory, and then how the real life situation they use those kind of topic in their working style. So you don't need to actually promote any kind of company. It's not your job. So that's the thing I have to say, that there's no such thing that I cannot say it has better opportunities. Depends on how appealing your case and whether you can address the review feedback.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, can we do an interview with more than one person?
Certainly, you can interview more than one person. It depends. Sometimes one person enough, but one interview may not be enough. So let's say we need a gatekeeper actually all the time. When you're writing a case and you need to interview people, you need gatekeeper. Without having key persons, difficult actually. Nobody is going to see you, or nobody is going to give you their valuable time. So all the time, for me, I all the time have collaboration with someone who have access to the in a particular company manager, CEO, or the issue that dealing with. So what happening is that when you're talking about I mean key person, so it can happen that that person, let's say, not enough to give you all information. But if you can have few people that can enrich your information, so fine. But again, if that person is CEO or someone have lot of information and sufficient for you to interview, also okay. So there's no such thing that one person, there's no such thing that one interview. It can be more than one person, it can be more than one interviews. But you have to give consent letter.
Okay. And can we write about the consequences of the protagonist's decision, or just leave it for the readers to decide?
Good question. When you're writing the case narrative, we do not give the outcome. We do not give the solution in the case narrative at all. So because the main reason why we are doing it, we want the readers or the students to actually ponder, think, and to solve based on their understanding, their perspective. So if we give the solution, then it is a full stop there. They have nothing to ponder much. So since we want them to, it should be thought provoking. So since we want them to think or ponder more, so we have to end it with that problem and the dilemma. Now, what happened in your teaching note? Of course, you have a questions, and some questions will be related to solving the problem. At least one question. So then you can suggest what are the ways you think it can solve the problem. And as I said, if you want to share the story, real story, how that company solved the problem, you can use the one section called epilogue. So there you can say exactly what that company or the protagonist have done to solve this issue.
Okay. One last question. Can we use board of directors as protagonists?
No problem at all. I mean, it depends on you and your problem and who is facing that problem. It can be CEO, it can be manager, it can be board of directors, anyone. Even it can be particular person who is not in the top hierarchy but maybe lower level, but again he has something to do, he has that authority to make a decision. So it is not a matter that you have to take one particular position. It can be any position, and it can be something that a person has the authority to make a choice or make a decision or is tasked to do it, something like that. I forgot one thing to say, that case has to be real. We can have disguise, we can disguise the name if the company doesn't want you to reveal the name, but it has to be real case. We call a fake case, we also have call it a pseudonym case. We cannot use pseudonym case. It has to be real case, but you can disguise the name of the case because maybe the company doesn't want you to reveal the company name. Yep. Okay, any more question?
Just one more question before we finish. The dilemma is from whose perspective? Is one perspective enough, or?
This question is not so clear to me.
Or like if they want to say if is one perspective enough to create a dilemma, or they need more perspective.
Dilemma, actually, it can be anything that the protagonist is facing. So you don't need to have many problem. You don't need to have many problem. It can be one problem, but maybe something very serious problem. Let's say your sales is declining and you are just worried and thinking how you can boost up the sales. So this is one problem, but it is a major problem for the company itself. So therefore, and another, I love this example, one case from Indian, one author, he was writing something about they're preparing, making, the house from bamboo can. And that bamboo can, that house is quite cheap and sustainable because it is environmental friendly. But then when they're trying to sell it, people are not buying it. Though it is sustainable, though it is cheap, so why people are buying it? How to make them aware about it? That was all about the case. Unfortunately, the case actually not published. I do not know why the authors thought to withdraw it. but it was something to me very appealing case problem, something really interesting to me. So actually this problem, you don't need to have many problem. It can be one particular big problem, but that problem itself is weight wise is very heavy. That's enough. But if you want to have sub problem, can, but um, given the fact that you are really able to highlight all those things in one particular case that has word limit 7,000 words. Okay, so it's up to you. To me, one big problem is fine, and if it is appealing, something to there are some takeaway is fine for me actually.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Farzana. We really appreciate your time, and thank you for all the people that is listening the webinar. We really appreciate your time, and we hope we see you soon in our next webinar. And don't forget to follow in our social media. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Dr. Farzana. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.